Big title, big video. Trump did what? Oh, if you missed it, a major influencer, which I don't even like using that word, has accused President Trump of something so serious, so significant, that the American public is shocked. But he is either misled or failed to read far enough in the document to understand the accusation he's made. I'm going to disclose to you exactly what's gone on in this case that many of you may not realize yet. You'll be hearing about shortly. But if that wasn't enough, the same influencer does something that he should never have done. And he'll be receiving more than likely a knock on his door shortly. Because this is exactly what President Trump needs right now. Because around him is a conflict brewing that is so large. I wish I could just say one conflict, but we could probably go with 9 conflicts. Any single one would normally cripple any presidency, but he has to deal with 9 simultaneous conflicts, and none of them are here. But we're going to distract him with what just happened, and it's a story I'll bring you in just a few seconds.
Lillian Bonsignor is no stranger to the New York City Fire Department, a 31-year EMT veteran who is coming out of retirement to make history as the first uniformed woman to lead the department.
We've all been doing this job with one mission, and that's to save the lives, protect the health and safety of New Yorkers and the visitors to our great city.
Zoran Mandami has made his choice for New York City Fire Commissioner. One little problem. She has 0 fire experience. 0. Let alone that they said the first female fire commissioner. Not true. Facts escape most mainstream media. Laura Kavanaugh was the first female fire commissioner, but I digress for a moment. As I've stated a million times over, good luck, New York. So much coming at you. No fire experience. But don't worry, she's got this. Zoran's got this. Other breaking news, a little housekeeping. Kash Patel following through on his commitment to shut down the Hoover building, announcing it yesterday. We scrapped that plan. Instead was selected the already existing Reagan building they'll be moving the FBI over to. And then this breaking story. Well, not breaking anymore. Continuing to develop, coming out of Minnesota. This is an amazing clip here. At least somebody's doing some investigative journalism out here. If you try to knock on the door of Somalia-owned daycares that have received millions of tax dollars from the Minnesota government, well, they can't even spell the sign correctly because that says Quality Learning Center. So this investigative journalist went point by point, and I'll show you here, just so you haven't watched it. Nick Shirley was the investigator who went door to door to these businesses and asked them, we'd love to see how many children you have in the center. This is one example of what he did here.
You have 102 children here in your child care?
Which child care, ma'am? Is a lot of
Minnesota Child Care right here. It's from the state of Minnesota's website. We're just wondering where the children are. We're just wondering where the kids are.
And who are you?
My name's Nick Shirley.
Nick Shirley.
And where are you? Which department? That is harassment.
Oh, we are from ourselves.
Yeah.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. Look at that. Shut us down.
Shut him down door after door, business after business. Nick Shirley, what a phenomenal job going and proving to the people exactly what's going on in Minnesota. But, of course, what is Tim Walz worried about after being called out $4 million of hard-earned tax dollars going to an education center that can't even spell learning correctly, and they went door to door? It's on YouTube. I'll put a link in. If you go to justiceignite.com or restrictedrepublic.com, you'll find the link. I invite you to watch it. He did a phenomenal job. But what's Governor Walz worried about? He's worried about Kwanzaa. Happy Kwanzaa, Minnesota. Gwen and I are wishing all who celebrate a wonderful week of warmth, health, and unity. So focused on the problem at hand, isn't he? He would have made such a wonderful vice president along with Kamala. But he wasn't the only one celebrating Kwanzaa, now was he?
Habarigani, Umoja. Hello, Chicago. I want to take a moment to wish all those celebrating a happy and joyous Kwanzaa.
What does that mean? The news of the day is that you're going bankrupt. That should be the news of the day. Of course, he announced unity being the first day. City Council sends alternative budget to Mayor Brandon Johnson. Will he veto it by defying council? Morally bankrupt and unbalanced $163 million. But these are what these mayors and governors are focused on, huh? Never what they should be. But isn't that the state of politics nowadays? Well, going back to Minnesota, though. This is the lieutenant governor of Minnesota.
Assalamualaikum. My name's Peggy Flanagan. I am the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, and I'm really honored and humbled to be here with all of you today. I am incredibly clear that the Somali community is part of the fabric of the state of Minnesota.
Of course, she has her own political aspirations, doesn't she?
Hey, Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan here. I just was visiting with some Uber and Lyft drivers out at the airport. And folks are afraid as folks see their friends being detained and picked up by ICE.
Man, because ICE is the issue, aren't they? ICE is always the issue. Peggy Flanagan, the front runner for the Democrat nomination for the U.S. Senate in Minnesota. You folks in Minnesota, so much time with so little time, that scandal growing daily. But of course, we got to focus on some real issues here. That was just the housekeeping portion of the broadcast. Before we move into what just happened to President Trump, who received a rather significant threat and was accused of something even more significant. But the person accusing him of one of the most horrific things you can accuse somebody of either misled the public or failed to read the intake document. And just so happens to be the same person who laid down the threat. And I would suspect very shortly we're receiving a knock on his door. But that's the story we're going to get onto here rather quickly before we get on to what President Trump actually has to worry about. And it's by far more significant than any influencer who's simply trying to distract President Trump from his mission. Before I do, huge favor. I want you to look at Lisa's page. If you're new here, welcome home. I hope you subscribe. It's the button right here, sits at the center of the page. And by clicking on it and doing a simple drop down, always make sure if you're subscribed, your bell is checked to all. It's one of the things you could do to make sure the algorithm knows this news matters. By putting a comment, by sharing the video. All those things make a difference. This is one part of Restricted Republic. The other is my page. I hope if you have a moment, you'll click on that link. That channel has exploded recently, and that's because of each and every one of you. And if you want to see both of us, I hope you know by now, RestrictedRepublic.com is our home news channel, where we not only put up all our public videos with all the commercials and interruptions removed, but we do exclusive content. You get there, I'm going to go upwards of at least 12 exclusive videos per week now. It's grown daily because the channel's grown daily, because people just want black and white news presented in the way it was meant to. Not down talking to anyone, just giving you the facts that you need to make decisions on this crazy political landscape, and we try to keep it as clear and concise as possible. And we'd love you to go to RestrictedRepublic.com right now and join us there. But now let's get on with this broadcast. So this, what we're about to discuss, kind of funnels off of what we discussed yesterday. Both Lisa and I discussed this. The 1 million pages the DOJ just located, which I think has been employed from the very beginning. I think they very well had these pages. And I think President Trump just scammed everyone. You see, all he wanted was somebody else to be pushing for the release, so he wasn't the bad guy. I think he's sick of Orange Man bad, so now he's got Massey and the Democrats begging for it, and they're going to get exactly what they wanted. And I made that determination yesterday. And after my broadcast, what does President Trump come out and state? Release all of their names, embarrass them, and get back to helping our country. You see, they won't have time to review those million documents. The Department of Justice will. And nobody will be able to stop whose names are on those pages. And I determine, and I believe, that President Trump knows exactly who's on those pages. And this may end this saga once and for all because, in my opinion, it's being used as a distraction. A distraction to keep your eye off the ball of what President Trump actually has to contend with. And why do I state that? Because the influencers, the ultra-left influencers, the types of Brian Krassenstein, continue to push. Massive breaking. Data set 8 of the Epstein files shows that a victim stated that Trump and Epstein raped her and that a limo driver heard Trump in the back speaking to Jeffrey about abusing girls. Serious accusation here. The victim then committed suicide in January of 2000 after reporting the incident. Police didn't believe it was a suicide. Share this everywhere. There's the report that he posted, Brian Krassenstein. You see, Trump stated he raped me, raped her long, blown off, blah, blah, blah. No way it was a suicide. Got it? World goes crazy. Oh my goodness. What did Trump do? He did what? Serious accusation. Except, you should probably read the entire intake document, which of course most mainstream media won't do because they won't do research. Here's the intake document. Somebody calls the FBI, National Threat Operations Center, to report potential information related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The date of 10/27/2020. Going down, I will show you the section that he cited. It's right here. Same section. You could see it for yourself. Trump stated he raped me, go on, and so forth. But all you have to do is move slightly down in the document, not very far. During the report, he mentioned John Doe number 2 was actually John W. Nichols. Now just let that sink in for a moment. Anybody who knows their Clinton history will recognize that name. Who tried to originally set up Blink for the bombing in Oklahoma City. Nichols worked security for Bill and Hillary Clinton. As Blink aided a place where Nichols worked security at the door, Hillary walked up to Blink, drunk, and began yelling as they asked to leave and fired Nichols, which led Nichols to attempt to set up him for the bombing. That's your source for this information. Just so you put everything into perspective. But of course, Brian Krassenstein, he ran with that. President Trump guilty, Orange Man bad. But you should really have shown everyone the source of the information first because, well, he has a history of making some very, very large unverified claims. It was in the document itself. All you had to do was go to page 3. But now the American public knows that, Brian. But you didn't stop there, did you? No, you went further, didn't you? You see, Brian's got a big following, 962,000 followers, almost 1 million now. That's an ultra influencer. So he posted this, just to double down. Trump is dead man walking. America should put him to sleep now. It is the humanitarian thing to do. Those are very incendiary words, and the world went crazy. You see it here. Brian has this pinned to his page. It sits right there. Somebody asking, is this a threat? It certainly sounds like it. His explanation is this. He goes back to a Trump post. Stephen Colbert is a pathetic train wreck with no talent or anything else necessary for show business success. Now, after being terminated by CBS, but left out to dry, he has actually gotten worse. Along with his non-existent ratings, Stephen is running on hatred and fumes. A dead man walking. CBS should put him to sleep now. It is a humanitarian thing to do. Now Trump is obvious to most, referencing that CBS should permanently fire him, terminate him. Not the threat that was provided for, in many opinion, here. Out of context, this would sound like something much different. And this is what most of the world saw. Trump is dead man walking. America should put him to sleep now. It is the humanitarian thing to do. You see, just like the prior post, you did not provide context. And when you don't provide context, there's normally reasoning behind that, now isn't there? And that is very dangerous. Note to those who don't get it, from Brian Krassenstein, I am not calling for violence against Trump of any kind. I am 100% against violence. I'm also 100% for pointing out the hypocrisy of MAGA. Happy holidays. But Brian, it's too late. The post is floated out there. And the reaction may be similar to what happened to somebody else in your family. Ed Krassenstein, James Comey is right. 86-47 is the way to go. You remember that, right? And what happened next? I literally had the Secret Service at my house. More details in a minute. Now, will Brian get the same reaction? We'll wait and we'll see. But you see, all of this is a distraction. It always has been and it always will be. A distraction for the efforts and the work of President Trump, who has something more significant he has to be concerned about right now. Not only Zelensky and the meeting coming up, well, tomorrow allegedly. President Trump will meet Ukrainian President Zelensky on Sunday at Mar-a-Lago. No, he's got a lot to contend with. Far beyond what most can perceive in the scope and scale of tensions mounting in the world around him. Most couldn't hold up to the pressures of Europe pushing for World War III, Zelensky's calls for U.S. to respond to signals Russia preparing for war, Zelensky telling his country to be ready for war, Putin branding NATO's leaders as little pigs, Russia forces capturing city centers that they thought nobody would ever be able to capture, bills blocking Trump from launching war with Venezuela failing in the House, Israel hitting Hezbollah targets so we continue to go on, the war in Venezuela, China and Russia entering the theater, China going absolutely crazy, now simulating war in the Caribbean, and U.S. approving the largest Taiwan arms package in history at over $11 billion. But we should ignore all this, right? So why is Trump under nonstop attack? Politically, personally, and now with open death threats from social media extremists. One way to word it, huh? While the world is literally sliding towards global war. Europe is preparing for a direct conflict with Russia. The Middle East is one ceasefire away from exploding again. China is furious over the largest weapons deal to Taiwan in history. And the United States is flirting with a brand new conflict in Venezuela, but Trump has to deal with social media influencers. You see, this isn't hypothetical. This isn't fear-mongering. This is happening right now in your and my world. So ask yourself this. Should the President of the United States be fighting influencers and smear campaigns? Or should he be focused on stopping the planet from lighting itself on fire? Which would be my preference, and I'm sure it would be your preference also. Because the dogs of war aren't barking anymore. They're clawing at the gates. And this isn't a one front or two front or three front field. No, it's more a 9 front. And so we got to discuss those fronts. And let me ask a simple question to begin all of this. Why should President Trump be forced to deal with nonstop attacks from the left, coordinated smear campaigns, and now open death threats from ultra-rank social media influencers, when the world is inches away from falling into a multi-front global war? Something that should terrify everyone. Seriously. This is what the Commander-in-Chief is waking up to every single day. Not just political chaos at home, but a planet teetering on the edge of disaster. And truly only one man who's shown any ability to be able to stop it. And yet the media wants you distracted by hashtags, influencers, and manufactured outrage. But here let's talk about reality and the global context. How close can we get to the edge without falling over? Because right now, the largest military conflict in Europe since World War II is on the verge of escalating again in 2026. War in the Middle East could reignite at any moment. The United States is on the brink of a brand new conflict with Venezuela, and China is absolutely furious over the largest weapons package ever approved for Taiwan. Again, the dogs of war aren't barking anymore. They're clawing at the front gate, and everyone can hear it. And while President Trump is trying to manage this mess, the left is busy screaming into microphones and lighting matches. And that's only one side of it. What about Europe and Russia? We can start with Europe. Europe leaders are feverishly preparing for a war with Russia, openly talking about it, daring it even. And Vladimir Putin, he's noticed. He's now openly mocking them. He's calling them pigs and piglets and discussing placing Russian missiles within striking distance of the UK. That's not rhetoric anymore. That's positioning. Putin's made it crystal clear. Russia will achieve its goals in Ukraine either diplomatically or by force. Those are not the words of a man backing down. Those are words of a leader preparing for escalation. And then you have Ukraine and NATO. And what about Ukraine? He's going to meet with President Trump on Sunday, right? The guy who's never willing to surrender territory, which means the war drags on. And the longer it drags on, the greater risk that NATO gets pulled in, intentionally or accidentally. Even President Zelensky is now openly saying next year will be a year of war. Not peace talks, not de-escalation. No, something far different. War. And while all this is happening, President Trump is expected to juggle diplomacy, deterrence, and defense, while being accused of everything under the sun by people who've never carried anything near the responsibility that he does, nor even understand it. But there's battlefield reality. On the ground, Russian forces are still moving forward. Cities are falling. Front lines are shifting. Ukrainian front lines are failing. This is not a frozen conflict. It's active, grinding warfare. And if that wasn't enough, Russian security forces are now allegedly testing NATO's borders, briefly crossing into Estonia. That's how big wars start. Not with speeches, with small incidents. We haven't touched the Middle East, which remains an absolute powder keg. Israel and Hezbollah are supposedly under a ceasefire. Yet Israel's airstrikes are still hitting southern and northeast Lebanon. Why? Because Hezbollah hasn't disarmed. Because threats don't vanish just because diplomats write on a piece of paper. And the man who understands all of this reality is Trump. And the left, they pretend it doesn't exist. And then we have Venezuela. The House had a chance to reinforce constitutional war powers, and they failed. They voted down a resolution that would have clearly defined congressional authorization. So now the possibility of conflict remains wide open. And who gets blamed if things escalate because of that? President Trump. Not the people who weakened the guardrails. Congress. And then you have China and Taiwan. The United States just approved the largest arms sales to Taiwan in history. That's not symbolic. That's systemic. Seismic. Sorry. Get excited here. China's furious, openly condemning the move, accusing the U.S. of violating sovereignty and escalating tensions. Add to the American blockade pressure on Venezuela, a major oil supplier to China, and you have a recipe for retaliation, economic, diplomatic, or military. Pushing China without consequences is fantasy. And President Trump knows it. So what's the big picture? Let me put it plainly. It is entirely possible, frighteningly possible, that we are staring down war in Europe, war in the Middle East, war in South America, war in Asia. And he has to deal with social media influencers. And this is all happening at the same time. This would be a worldwide war, what everybody is hoping to avert. And instead of supporting stability, strength, and serious leadership that only President Trump has shown, the left is attacking him. The only man trying to prevent the catastrophe. What does that beg the question of? It would almost appear as if that's the catastrophe they're looking for. If global leaders want peace, now is the moment, but they're failing in the moment. Not next year, not after the next election, now. Peace doesn't care about election cycles. Peace doesn't care who's in office. War doesn't stop because of who's president. But right now, war fever has infected too many people in power, and they're using it as a tool, as a marketing ploy. And that makes President Trump's job infinitely harder. So maybe, just maybe, instead of throwing stones, death threats, and viral outrage, they should try something slightly different. We should let the commander-in-chief do what he was elected to do. What a novel thought, huh? Keep this country and the world from going over the edge. Maybe that's their intent. And isn't that a terrifying thought? On behalf of Lisa, for allowing me to fill in today, I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless Justice Knight. Signing out.